Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you understand the true cost of college and tackle the runaway costs of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz, founders of Westface College Planning. Now, your hosts for College Smart Radio, Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz.
Are you faced with questions like, when should I start planning for college? What is the first thing I should do? And where should I go for information? On today's College Smart Radio program, I'll be delving into answers to those questions with my guest, Lynn O'Shaughnessy, a nationally recognized college expert and higher education consultant. We'll be discussing how to prepare for this tremendous expense called college. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm in the studio on my own today. My co-host Mark Guthrie will be back next week. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With some private schools costing well over $60,000 a year, a UC costing close to $35,000, and a California State University running $25,000 a year, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and helping you create a personal college funding plan to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on our education experience, we share our insights with you week in and week out. I'm a certified financial planner, and Mark and I are the owners of the San Carlos-based college financial planning business, Westface College Planning. We're also the owners of Westface Financial Advisory, a registered investment advisory firm. We host workshops and webinars on college financial planning and consult with parents on a daily basis. In addition to our insights, we bring in experts in many areas of the college process. From counselors, financial professionals, financial aid officers, student coaches, parents, and even students, you'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. In addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway costs of college. We also have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning, and we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that we host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show. My guest on today's show is Lynn O'Shaughnessy. She's a nationally recognized college expert, and she's a higher ed journalist, consultant, and speaker. If any of you listeners have been following anything on the news having to do with college and the costs of college, you've probably heard Lynn. She's written or been interviewed about college issues for the New York Times, Bloomberg Business Week, Consumer Reports, USA Today, Money Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times. She has been all over the news, and she really is a nationally recognized college expert, so we're really excited to have her on the show. Lynn is also the author of numerous books, including her Amazon bestseller, The College Solution, a guide for everyone looking for the right school at the right price. And Lynn contributes regularly to her own college blog, The College Solution. And she writes a college blog for CBS Money Watch. And she also gives popular presentations about college strategies to schools, nonprofits, companies, and financial advisory firms. And in fact, I invited her on the show today because she'll be in the Bay Area next week doing some of those presentations, and we'll share that with our audience. Hi, Lynn. Welcome to College Smart Radio.
Hi. Thanks, Beatrice.
Well,
Appreciate inviting me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So let's talk. You've got such a range of knowledge, and you've got a lot of experience writing and even writing your book about the whole college experience. Let's kind of take our audience through the process. I mean, when should families start preparing for college?
Well, I think that, when you're a freshman in high school, when your child, reaches that age, or even before, I think one thing you need to be thinking about is the money. How much are you going to be expected to pay for college? And of course, to focus on your child's academics. If they have some kind of weakness, try to make sure that they get the tutoring they need to succeed. Because frankly, you don't have to be that 4.0 kid to get money for college. I think some people stress about that. But, you should be the best student that you can be, because students who have a higher academic profile are the ones who typically get better packages, whether it's merit aid or need-based aid at many schools. So, that's important. But as far as the finances go, I think the first thing that families should do is find out what their expected family contribution is. That's very important, because I think a lot of families, they kind of stress about, how much is this going to cost us? But they have no idea. They don't know where to go to get some sense of what schools are going to expect them to pay at a minimum for college. And so
it's really valuable. We talk often on the show about that families should understand whether there's any chance they might qualify for need-based financial aid, and that's part of calculating the EFC. And for our listeners, we do have a glossary of commonly used terms used in financial aid in college, and one of them is the EFC, or expected family contribution. So feel free to take a look on your tablet or look at your PC, pull up our glossary, and you'll get an explanation of some of those terms. So let's talk about that. Lynn, what do you recommend as the best place to go to kind of get an estimate of your EFC if you're just looking at someone who's in grade 8 or grade 9?
Yeah, I would use the expected family contribution calculator on the College Board. So you could go to the College Board, type in EFC calculator in the upper right-hand corner, or you can just Google it in College Board. One that people, I think, use a lot, which I would not recommend, is the one on finaid.org, because it's very old. It hasn't been updated since the 2008 school year, so avoid that one. But when you use the EFC calculator, you're going to need, like, your latest tax return. You're going to put in things like, what is your, adjusted gross income? What are your assets? They're only going to care about your non-retirement assets, not your retirement assets like SEP, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, that sort of thing. Don't put those in there.
That's a great.
It really will mess you up.
And then if you're in grade 9 and you're remembering that now your kids are freshmen, keep remembering that, because I still run into parents that are seniors and show up and they're like, well, I just listed all my assets, and they listed their retirement assets, and that really is going to hurt your formula.
Yeah, well, totally blow it out of the water.
Yeah, most commonly, hopefully, if you do have something. Now, the College Board EFC calculator, they ask for the equity in your primary home also, because some of those colleges ask for it. So, Lynn, how do you kind of advise? I mean, do you recommend that clients also go to a net price calculator on the specific colleges they're looking at, or how do you advise for them to know whether equity in their home matters? You're in California, we're in California. Equity in your home can sometimes be where a lot of families have their asset. Right.
Well, I wanted to go just back a little bit on the EFC, because once you get this number, it is a dollar figure, and so the typical family in the Americas, like $50,000, their income. So that will typically produce an EFC anywhere between $5,000 and $6,000. So that would be, what at least the formula says you should be able to afford. Whether you can or not is a totally different question. But if you have an EFC like that, then you're going to want to look for schools that are very generous with need-based aid, because you're going to need a lot of it. If you have a very high EFC and there's no ceiling to that, the highest I've ever seen of someone I know was $108,000 was their EFC. They lived in Del Mar, fancy part of San Diego County, near the beach, and that would be what the family would have been expected to pay. So for a high EFC, then you're going to be, a wealthy family will look for schools that give merit scholarships.
Absolutely, and I just had a client yesterday who had an EFC of $249,000.
Oh my gosh.
Which is wonderful. I mean, that means the family's doing well financially, but it doesn't mean, just for our listeners, it doesn't mean you don't want to continue. It's okay still to apply for financial aid, because and to be to consider merit aid, and also there can be room for possibly appealing offers. So I don't discourage anyone from filling in the financial aid firms, even if their EFC is super high. So good point about the low EFC means more generous schools are you should consider the more generous schools, and the message being lower EFC, the expected family contribution is $5,000. If you have an expected family contribution of $5,000 and you are going to go to San Diego State, you're not going to get as much financial aid as if you go to a private school, if you can get accepted. Is that or is there more than you were going to say?
Schools, like in California, a lot of kids unfortunately feel like, or their parents, I think, feel like, oh, we have to stay in California. Like, oh, I've talked to parents who go, well, they can go anywhere they want, but they need to stay in California. It's like, all right, well, that is not what I'm talking about, because you have more opportunities if you throw a wider net. And unfortunately, in this state, there aren't a lot of generous schools for students who need financial aid. Now, I'm talking about the private schools. There's probably about 6 or 7 that are generous. Those are Stanford, USC, and Occidental, and the Claremont schools, Pomona, Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd, Pitzer, Scripps. That's really it. So if you have a child who has, for instance, a EFC of 5,000, and you apply to a school like Santa Clara or Loyola Marymount, good luck. You're going to get more than likely a very bad financial aid package, because these schools are very stingy.
So we talked a little bit, I kind of threw in the net price calculator. If you're in love with a private school, make sure you go to that school and enter in your personal information so you can really get a feel for what offer you expected. What are you seeing that when you're talking to different students, are those net price calculators turning out to be pretty accurate?
Well, it depends. You have to now. A net price calculator, for those of you who don't know, is a calculator that the federal government mandated all schools use. You were going to input the same kind of information that you did with the EFC calculator, but you're going to do it for a specific school, and the school will then calculator is supposed to provide you with a personal estimate of what that school will cost you. So if you are the kid with the 5,000 EFC and you're typing the stuff in for Stanford, you are probably going to get, like maybe $55,000 in aid, and almost all of that will be grants. If you do that for Santa Clara, for instance, you'll probably get a little bit of, grant money, but a lot of it, the majority will be loans. So that's why it can be very illuminating to use these net price calculators. The only problem that you will encounter is that some schools have lousy calculators. If the school has used the federal template, which doesn't ask many questions, it's very poor calculator, then it's not going to be worth
we
anything.
need to take a quick break here from College Smart Radio. You're with us on College Smart Radio, where my guest is Lynn O'Shaughnessy, a college expert, and we'll be right back after a quick break. Thanks.
College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Contact our hosts at collegesmartradio.com or call 650-587-1559. Now back to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs is a smart thing to know. To help families be on this radio show, I host community workshops live and via webinar several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. To learn more and reserve your seat, go to my website, collegesmartradio.com. If you've just joined us, we've been talking with my guest, Lynn O'Shaughnessy, who's a college expert, author, and higher education consultant, about the different steps that a family needs to think about when preparing for college. And we've been talking about the cost of college, the expected family contribution. And just before I cut Lynn off before the break, Lynn, you were talking about net price calculators, the specific ones on the school. And I think I cut you off when we were saying were saying they aren't always accurate. And that's the same thing that we see. So was there anything else that I missed when I cut you off?
They tend to be, private schools tend to have better calculators. If the calculator directs you to the College Board and the school's calculator is there, it's probably a very good calculator. The more questions it asks, probably the better it is. The one that uses the federal template, the schools that use that, you can be finished with that in less than 30 seconds.
Yeah,
so,
and the ones that actually ask about merit can be interesting also. Then they're going directly back to the school when they start asking about your marks. So there's a range, but they're all kind of, as a family doing this research, it's okay to go to a couple of these calculators, check them out, try and understand how they work so you can understand your your general picture. So now a family knows their EFC is $10,000. Are there tools available so they can figure out what are the most generous schools?
Yeah, there are a lot of a lot of tools. One that I like is just the College Board. If you go on a lot of kids have probably gone on the College Board. That's the one they're familiar with, but you can use it to look at the financial aid information, what the typical kid gets from a specific school. So if you go to the College Board, type in the name of a school, and then you'll see a bunch of hyperlinks. You'll want to click on Paying, P-A-Y-I-N-G, and that will bring you to the financial aid stats of a particular school.
That's funny. I thought you said pain as in P-A-I-N, which is
that.
such a perfect, that's great. I mean,
yeah,
paying
right.
and paying, that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, you go to the College Board, and then you can, look at what the breakdown of what percentage of need a school meets. So if you're looking for financial aid, it's important to know typically how much assistance does the school provide.
It's really, and many of my clients will ask me that question. How do you know? And the truth is, it is reported. The college is reported. The Department of Education reports it. So these numbers are based on history, but it truly, we've seen it does reflect what their future awards are also. So it's very valuable, these tools.
Yeah, you just have to keep them with a grain of salt, because some of these, sometimes I roll my eyes, because some of the statistics of what percentage of need does a school meet. For instance, I've got this online class now, and I have a whole lesson on how to use the College Board's tool, but I use as an example Washington University in St. Louis, which is a very hot school. And when you look at the financial aid numbers at WashU, they meet 100% of need. And what you also want to see is how many kids get their full financial need met. And at Washington U, it's 97% of kids. So that's almost perfect. You can also see what the average financial aid package is at Washington University, which is over $32,600. And then for those who are wealthy, those people in Silicon Valley, they got lots of money but don't want to pay full price for, say, a private school. You can also look on the College Board to see, hey, does this school give merit scholarships to high-income students? And WashU is is unusual for being a very elite school that also gives merit scholarships to these high-income kids. But the average is about a little over $10,100.
Those are great examples, and some schools pride themselves in not giving merit aid. Now, if I've got a parent listening, do they need to have a login to the College Board, or is this all just publicly available without a login?
Yeah, you don't need that. You can just go right to the College Board and then type in the name of a school and then hit that paying link for the school, and then you'll get the financial aid stats.
Well, that's a great resource, and we'll make sure to include it on our College Smart Radio glossary also, because I don't think I actually have that paying click on my website. So one of the points, kind of as we were talking about what we're going to talk about today, is you mentioned what's the difference between a college and university? And people ask me this question. So what's the answer to that question?
Yeah, it's funny because that's on my college blog, thecollegesolution.com. That is one of the posts. I've done posts on this. It's one of the most popular ones. So I think a lot of people are Googling for this. Yeah, I think it's super important to know. My kids went to colleges, but most kids go to universities, particularly in California, where it's a huge, big state, right? There aren't as many private schools here. And so almost everyone goes to state universities. But the big one that people think about, like the UCs, for instance, are research-intensive schools. And what you need to know is, of course, some of the pros is, you've got, cutting-edge research going on at these schools. Some of the professors might have had a Nobel Prize or big prizes, right? I mean, lots of majors. But what I think people also need to know is that the priority of research in universities is research. And so the professors are evaluated for tenure. They get raises, they get kudos if they do really well on their research. They don't get kudos or a merit pay or tenure for being a good teacher. So it is devalued at research universities, and oftentimes the students who are undergrads are getting taught by teaching assistants, graduate students.
I think those are great points, because oftentimes I understand people want the prestige of having a degree from some of those universities, but it's good for families to understand that often the education can be as good or better or more direct with some of these colleges or smaller colleges. That's a great point. So let's talk about that. It feels like every day I see a college ranking that shows up somewhere on the internet. What's your take on college ranking, and how do we deal with it?
Well, I've written a lot about this on my blog, thecollegesolution.com, and my book, and they're really horrible college rankings. What I would use them, the methodology is completely flawed. It's a beauty contest. Schools are asked, the biggest factor of U.S. News' rankings are actually a personality contest every March. Schools in each big category, like National University category, are given surveys, 3 to each school. I think there's like 260-something in the National University category. So that's schools like UCLA and Berkeley, along with my alma mater, University of Missouri, and Lehigh, and the Ivies, and Central Florida, and all sorts of schools, some of Kennesaw State, some you've never heard of. And all these schools are supposed to grade each other on a 1 to 5 scale. Now, you tell me what somebody at Stanford knows about what's going on at the University of Connecticut, and yet they're supposed to grade each other. So it's a farce. The best commentary I've ever seen on college rankings was done by Malcolm Gladwell in the New Yorker. If you just Google college rankings in the New Yorker, you'll see this wonderful article about why they're just so ridiculous. How I would suggest to use them is to use them as a way to find schools that you don't know about. We were talking about the national universities just a moment ago. Those are the ones that people at least have recognize the names, but it's really the colleges, which I think are such a wonderful way for undergrads to get an education. People don't know what those are. All right.
So the college rankings are going to sometimes might identify some schools. People can do some research, but gosh, just don't take a look at these rankings and call it the godsend of this is the better school or the worst school.
No.
So, hey, Lynn, we've only got a couple more minutes. So can you share a little bit? First of all, let's make sure you mention your website, and also talk about the Cutting the Cost of College online course that you have available for listeners.
Yeah, I've done this. I was a financial journalist for many years. That's how I got into this, because I have a financial bent to this. I used to be an LA Times reporter, but then I ended up writing for publications like the New York Times and Forbes and Business Week and Money and places like that. And when I was trying to figure out what to do with my own daughter, she had thought she wanted to go to Berkeley, like my husband had gotten his undergrad there, and we really didn't know about any schools, just like typical Californians. And because it's so hard to get into Berkeley, you really have to be in the top 10% of your class, and she went to a private school where there were so many bright kids that was not going to happen. That's how we started exploring colleges. And I also wondered, well, private schools seem so expensive. Would my daughter get financial aid or merit scholarships or what? I had no idea. So I decided to look into this, and I ultimately got so fascinated and realized people don't have this information because it's not coming from the school. High school counselors typically, there are hardly any are trained in this area. So I kind of filled the void. So I started my blog several years ago, and thecollegesolution.com, and then I wrote The College Solution. It's in the second edition. It was an Amazon bestseller.
Hey, Lynn, I apologize. We've only got less than a minute to go. So I just want to, and we didn't really get a chance to talk exactly about the online course, but you can go to thecollegesolution.com, click on Lynn's online course, and learn some more about it. Also, she's going to be at Woodside High School and Sequoia High School this week on April 2nd and 3rd. So you can Google that and find out more information for our listeners. Thanks for being with us, Lynn.
Okay, sure.
Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. You can hear us each week here on KDOW 1220 AM, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We promise to bring you up-to-date information from the front lines of helping parents deal with the most expensive years of their lives. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio. We look forward to sharing more helpful information with you next week.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. And join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience. It should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax Center legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie or Beatrice Schultz. Please consult your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz are owners and investor advisor representatives of Westface Financial Advisory. College planning services offered through Westface College Planning. Insurance services offered through Westface Financial and Insurance Services. License number OF 35251. Financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Westface Financial Advisory.